This story is about a young man named Andres who wants to be as clever and mischievous as his father-in-law, Rudolph. Rudolph is a smooth talker who has charmed many women over the years. Inspired by him, Andres decides to practice becoming just like his father-in-law. Andres is a simple, honest man who runs a restaurant with his wife, Alice. They have a son. One day, on Andres' son's birthday, Andres packs a gift and waits for Rudolph to pick him up. But Rudolph is late because he's busy flirting with another woman. Andres knows all about his father-in-law's behavior. When Rudolph finally arrives, he says, "If anyone at home asks why we're late, we'll just make up a story." Andres, who dislikes lying, reluctantly agrees. Back home, Alice is upset with Andres for being late, but Rudolph quickly comes up with an excuse. "I met a tourist from abroad who needed my help desperately, and that's why I was delayed." The excuse works, and they all celebrate the birthday together. That night, Rudolph entertains his wife passionately, and her loud cheers are heard throughout the house. Embarrassed, Andres tells Alice, "Your dad doesn't care where he decides to get romantic." Alice laughs and says, "That's true love for you. Now come to bed. I still want another baby." The next day, Andres wakes up with severe back pain after a passionate night with Alice. Seeing his condition, Rudolph laughs and teases him. "What happened to you, son-in-law?" Frustrated, Andres replies, "Your daughter is wearing me out because she wants another kid. How do you manage to keep your wife so happy all the time?" With a cheeky grin, Rudolph says, "Well, whenever I make love, I start thinking about other women, and that works for me." Indres, on the other hand, feels like his life is stuck, and even his restaurant isn't doing well. To distract himself, he goes to a bar with his father-in-law. There, his father-in-law introduces him to his friend, Sarah, to whose house he used to deliver vegetables. Taking advantage of this, his father-in-law secretly loves Sarah. He advises Indres that to enjoy life, he too should get a girlfriend. He points towards a chubby girl, but Indres responds, "Are you telling me to betray your own daughter?" His father-in-law says, "You have to make yourself happy before you can make anyone else happy." Indres keeps watching Sarah while she plays around, and Sarah seems to reciprocate his interest. However, in front of his father-in-law, Indres doesn't say anything. When they all step outside, Sarah joins them. Indres' father-in-law takes Indres' coat and puts it on Sarah, leaving Indres behind as he goes off with her to pursue his own interests. It starts raining, and Indres feels cold. When he returns home, he puts a pregnancy kit in his mouth out of frustration. Elish, his wife, then tells him that the pregnancy test was negative again. She says the doctor confirmed she's completely healthy, implying the problem might be with him. The next day, they visit the hospital for a semen test. Indres is given a container but struggles to collect his sample. Meanwhile, the hospital is about to close. Desperate, he starts thinking about Sarah to get aroused, but just then, his wife walks in. Embarrassed, he hands over the empty container and leaves. After this incident, his wife starts taunting him at every opportunity. Frustrated, Indres goes back to his restaurant, where Sarah shows up. He sends the cook home and takes over the cooking himself. He prepares a dish that Sarah loves. Sarah tells him she wanted to return his jacket but forgot it at home and invites him to her place. Now, Indres is deeply in love with Sarah and spends a lot of time with her at her house. Sarah also has a friend who is always with her. One day, Indres happily returns home with his jacket, but his wife notices the scent of perfume on it and finds a pair of panties in the pocket. Indres shifts the blame for this incident onto his father-in-law. Meanwhile, Rudolph, who is staying outside, is thrown out. Indres goes to the storeroom to give him a blanket and apologizes. During their conversation, Rudolph reveals that in 35 years of marriage, he has been involved with 168 women but never got caught. However, Indres, who tried something for the first time, managed to get him implicated. Rudolph believed that he was clever, but in reality, his wife knew everything about him. She had always secretly taken pictures of the women Rudolph was involved with. Despite knowing this, she tells her daughter Elish that she never confronted Rudolph because no matter how many women he was with, he always came back to her in the end. She adds that this time, Rudolph will bring her something expensive as an apology, just like he had done in the past. The next day, Rudolph goes to Sarah to return her panties. Later, he buys an expensive gift for his wife, Martha. While Martha is walking through the market with the gift, some thieves spot her, snatch her purse, and discard it after taking the loose change. Martha retrieves her purse and feels relieved, but she is hit by a car and dies on the spot. Meanwhile, Rudolph is preparing for their wedding night when the police arrive and inform him about Martha's death. After her passing, Rudolph undergoes a complete transformation. He loses interest in other women and begins drinking heavily, to the point that he mistakenly places an iron on his ear. On the other hand, Indres is thoroughly enjoying his life with both his wife and his mistress. Taking advantage of this situation, his wife secretly collects his semen. When she gets checked by the doctor, she finds out that there's nothing wrong with Indris. Meanwhile, Indris is showering Sarah with love every day. One day, while he is enjoying himself with Sarah in a car, the brakes fail and the car crashes into a tree. When Elish asks him about it, Indris makes an excuse saying, "The brakes failed and I barely survived. Now we need to sell this car and buy a better one." But Elish replies, "We don't have the money for that." The next day, Indris starts working as a cook at their restaurant to earn money, giving the waiter's job to the previous cook. His cooking turns out to be very tasty, and slowly the restaurant starts doing well. Indris eventually buys a new car, but he continues his affair with Sarah in the new car as well. His mind is constantly occupied with thoughts of Sarah. At the same time, whenever he gets a chance, he tries to act like an ideal husband with his wife, Elish. Rudolph, Elish's father, notices that his daughter has started looking happy again. Seeing this, he suspects that Indris is having an affair. On Christmas Day, Rudolph confronts Indris and says, "I know you're involved with someone else, but now you need to change and stop cheating on your wife, because if Elish finds out, she will not spare you." Indris denies it, saying, "I'm not having any affair." Just then, Sarah calls Indris. She is waiting outside his house and asks him to come out. Indris sneaks out under the pretense of throwing out the trash. He meets Sarah, wishes her Merry Christmas, and quickly leaves. This makes Sarah feel bad. Later, Indris switches Sarah's gift and gives it to his wife. However, the dress doesn't fit Elish because it's too big for her, as her curves were smaller. One day, Sarah visits the restaurant and meets Elish. When Andrei sees her there, he immediately senses that something bad is about to happen. He quickly starts hiding all the knives. Just then, his wife comes over and tells him that a girl named Sarah wants to work at their restaurant, and they should hire her because her big melons will attract more customers. Sarah gets the job at the restaurant, and arrangements are made for her to stay at Rudolph's house. While Sarah is unpacking her belongings, Elish asks if she would like something to eat. Sarah responds that she has already eaten and is now going to play tennis. Elish is delighted. During the game, Andrei starts feeling tired, and Elish teases him, saying he can't keep up. Later, Rudolph leaves in his taxi, and as soon as he's gone, Andres rushes to meet Sarah. He asks her why she is following him. Sarah confesses that she has fallen in love with him, and coming to him like this was her only option. Andres reminds her that she had earlier said they were just going to have fun together, to which Sarah replies that things have changed. She now truly desires him. She then pulls back the curtain, and Andres immediately ducks down to avoid being seen by his wife. Sarah takes off her dress and says, "If I've fallen in love, why should I be afraid?" Andres gives in and starts making love to her. Meanwhile, Elish sees this scene through her window, but assumes Sarah is with her boyfriend. She calls Andres and tells him to come home quickly, as she's in the mood now. However, Andres makes an excuse to avoid her. Meanwhile, Rudolph, reminiscing about Martha, takes a rose to her grave. When he gets there, he notices a yellow flower and is shocked. He rushes home and starts searching through Martha's diary. Andres, on the other hand, tries to escape Rudolph's notice by sneaking out through the window. Rudolph is seen scattering Martha's ashes on the road, but Andres stops him and asks why he's doing it. Rudolph explains that Martha had been deceiving him for 15 years. The yellow flowers her lover left on her grave had a photo with them, revealing her infidelity. Andres tries to reason with him, saying, "But you've been cheating on her for 35 years. Rudolph retorts, "I'm a man, I can do it, but she shouldn't have." Saying this, Rudolph grabs a stick and sets out to confront Martha's lover. Meanwhile, Andres returns home to his wife, Alice. Sarah, observing from the window, feels a surge of jealousy. Rudolph soon discovers that Martha's lover is a blind man. As he questions him about their relationship, he learns that Martha loved only tulips. She had fallen in love with the blind man because she knew how much he longed to see her. She wanted someone who would love her unconditionally. Realizing this, Rudolph drowns himself in alcohol. Andres finds him and takes him home, where he starts eyeing Alice suspiciously. The next day, Sarah and Alice both accidentally leave their dresses out. Alice notices Sarah's dress. It's the same one Andres had gifted her. Suspicion brews in Alice's mind, though she herself is having an affair with a waiter, something Andres knows nothing about. Andres, however, books a hotel room for Sarah. Alice, ever watchful, cleverly spots the address and hatches a plan to catch him red-handed. Later, Andres meets Sarah, who is thrilled. Andres tells her he's planned a dinner, but confesses, "Whatever is between us, we need to end it. I can't keep deceiving Alice anymore." Hearing this, Sarah loses her mind and starts yelling at Andres. A waiter approaches her, and Sarah angrily tells him to bring out all the most expensive dishes they have. Andres realizes that he's in big trouble now. Suddenly, Andres notices Alice entering and quickly hides under the table. Alice approaches Sarah and asks who she's here to meet. Sarah tells her that she's meeting her boyfriend, whom she met while playing pool. This makes Alice even more suspicious. Meanwhile, the waiter brings their order, but Andres signals him to take it back. The waiter understands and leaves with the dishes. He returns empty-handed and asks Alice for her order. Sarah tells him to just bring some water. The waiter begins to wonder what to do about the previous order. Alice then asks Sarah why she isn't eating anything. Sarah reveals that she's pregnant. Andres is shocked to hear this. The waiter keeps them engaged in conversation while Andres sneaks away. He rushes down to the lower floor where he meets Rudolph. Andres asks Rudolph for help. Rudolph turns off the restaurant lights and has the waiter bring a cake to Sarah's table. As Sarah blows out the candles on the cake, Rudolph arrives at the table. Alice is stunned to see him and angrily asks how he could start dating someone else so soon after their mother's death. On top of that, Sarah is pregnant. Rudolph responds that he too mourned Martha's death, but being with Sarah has given him a new purpose in life. He then proposes to Sarah, asking her to spend her life with him. Sarah happily accepts Rudolph's proposal. In the next scene, Alice meets Andres and is overjoyed because she too is now pregnant. Meanwhile, Rudolph scatters his late wife's ashes in the garden and finds happiness with Sarah. Andres thanks his father-in-law for helping him out. With this, the story comes to an end.